Well, during different stages in the blockchain era, there are different challenges. So for example, the earlier ones would be technical. So it's very hard to find technical people who are able to deliver the project as they mentioned in the white paper. That was in the earlier stage. But then in the later stage, the harder part becomes the funding. Hey everyone, my name is Lee Willson. I'm the co-founder of Blockchain Zoo, founding Supernode of World Blockchain Foundation. And on this episode of Blockchain Beyond Hype, I'll talk about the real-world challenges blockchain projects are facing now, from initiation to implementation. When we develop applications, we need to know our priorities, which are the ones which we should do first. Okay, some are must, some are good to have or nice to have. So I think we should concentrate on those things which we need blockchain more urgently. One is financial usage of blockchain, but that part is heavily regulated. So we need to talk about other parts, how that could revolutionize the industry, because when people go on e-gaming, when people play games, you don't have a border to that. Okay, when you play games online, you do not actually care who the other party is or where they are. Okay, and is there any time zone, right? And when you play games, you play games. That is something that is very good to be blockchainized in a way. And of course, we also talk about chain commerce, right? Because now when we talk about e-commerce requires a platform which needs to be based locally in a country and in a certain market, and because it's very tightly controlled by the flow of money or payments. So the only way now is to use credit cards, but we know that credit cards has very high cost of payment and the clearance is slow, but that's the way it is. But if we do a chain commerce, then that will really facilitate the decentralization of platforms like Alibaba, Taobao, and Amazon. So these also are the areas. And another areas to blockchainize is, I think, most importantly, information. And information is transmitted through internet. And when we say internet, we are talking about TCP/IP protocol. But when we talk about real free information, then it might need a different type of internet that is non-TCP/IP. In the internet era, we talk about platforms, right? I mean, platforms are like the toll. Okay, if you go on a highway, you have a toll to pay, right? So the platforms are like tolls. When buyers and sellers meet, okay, when passengers and drivers meet, and where holiday makers and homeowners meet, you know what I mean, right? They have to go through this platform, and for every transaction, this platform would take a part of the profits. That is why they become the giants in the world now, right? Just like Amazon, Alibaba, Uber, and Airbnb, because everybody needs to go through them, and through the transactions, they just take a big part of the transaction, and they become the richest in the world. But this only benefits a few people, the board of directors and the shareholders of the company. Can you imagine if all of these are being blockchainized, meaning to say that this platform doesn't belong to one company, but belongs to all the people who participate in the economy? Meaning to say, can you imagine this? If a business transaction, buyer, seller, or a driver and a passenger, for every transaction, there is a part of money, okay, in terms of tokens, okay, to be used for the lock in the smart contracts. And upon the execution of the transaction, this part of the money, which originally supposedly to go to the shareholders, to the company, it goes to the contributors to the economy. So can you imagine? Those who maintain the notes would get a part of the payment. Those who bring in more communities and customers to the market will get rewards. And best of all, even as a shopper, as a consumer, you are being rewarded because you contributed to the economy. So that would be a totally new way of economy. So when people are talking about sharing economy, actually they're not talking about the real sharing economy. Only chain commerce is the real sharing economy, because to share economy, everybody needs to share the wealth. To start a blockchain project, I think one needs to think, or if one really has a very clear mind of a solution to an existing problem. I think that's the key, the most important thing. But I do understand that nowadays we come across people who want to start a blockchain project for the sake of starting a blockchain project, or wanting to make some money out of it, to create tokens, so that they can do fundraising and eventually, hopefully, that they can come out with the project. So I think that is the greatest blind spot by most of the startups now. First of all, you need to have someone who is in that industry, because as I said earlier on, to start a blockchain project, you have to identify the problem, you have to identify also the solution to the problem. So you have got to be an industrial professional to be able to do that. This is the first thing. And second thing, you need to have the technical experts to really deliver the project, to carry out what you had wanted to do, because it's not enough. I mean, it's like building castles in the air. I can talk about the details of the castles, the color of the window, the door, and how would it be like. But if I don't have anyone really to build it, to deliver, then it's very hard. And this is one of the hardest part, because blockchain technology is still very new. Okay, and being new, there are not many professionals who really know how to do it. So it's more talk on paper talk than the real thing. This is one part. And the second part is, for any blockchain to be successful, you need a marketing team who is able to build the communities. And all of this needs a lot of money, because to build communities, you need to create awareness, and you can only create awareness by participating in activities, seminars, events, maybe advertise on social media. And nowadays, especially with thousands of blockchain projects going around, to separate yourself from the others and trying to tell others that you are the real thing, it's very hard, because the market, it's very difficult for them to tell the difference. To be very fair too, and most of the market are not interested in the technology itself. They're only interested to know when are the tokens available, which exchanges will they be on, and what are the market making strategies. So basically they're just interested in the money. So that is why you have this market of some people keep on producing all these projects, producing the tokens, and you also have the other party who is willing to jump on the bandwagon and profit from it. So I know it's not healthy, but it's the same thing, the same case for internet. 25 years ago, when there was the internet boom. I think this is adversely influencing the businesses, unless they're very forward-looking. But still, which business dares to take the risk? Because you're talking about shareholders, benefits, and stuff. So the board of directors would dare not go to risk the company's profits and face legal issues and things like that. So even when people talk about STOs, they have been talking about STOs for what, past 2 years? But until today, has any company or any project successfully launched their STOs and become globally recognized and in circulation? So it's not that easy. And if you can't even go for STO, which only representative of the shares and the stakeholding or the security, what more about other things? The legal fraternity, it's trying very hard to catch up, but still I think it will take some time before that happens, before blockchain and tokenization becomes really popular and acceptable by the general public. Well, during different stages in the blockchain era, there are different challenges. So for example, the earlier ones would be technical. So it's very hard to find technical people who are able to deliver the project as they mentioned in the white paper. That was in the earlier stage. But then in the later stage, the harder part becomes the funding, because there are too many projects sprouting out almost every day. And there is not so much hot money in the market to pour in, right? And even Bitcoin and Ethereum is still facing a hard time of, stabilizing its value, its prices. So you can imagine that any new projects nowadays, I think the hardest part is to get funding from the right people. Because for a real blockchain project, especially a public one, to be proper, you need actually participation from a lot of people to be truly decentralized. But to do that, you need a very extensive reach of the market. You need to reach different people from different places, from different countries, different cultures. And to do that by itself requires a lot of capital, and it costs a lot of money. So, that is why some projects that I know, they actually just approach a few people who's able to fund them. But when you only have a few parties who is able to fund the project, it becomes rather centralized, which is not a representation of a proper blockchain project. So I think that is a very big challenge we are facing generally in the industry. By extensive education, training, by real blockchain professionals. And that is why companies like Blockchain Zoom is producing a lot of education materials to the public. So I would advise those who are watching this to go to the Blockchain Zoo channel and watch a lot of these educational videos to learn about the technology and spread them widely. So because if we have more people who are aware of the real technology, of the real spirit of the technology, then it would help the market to identify the real projects and help those projects prosper. So the first one is to identify the problem and have a real solution to that problem and do a proper white paper. 2, to assemble the team, especially the technical team that is able to deliver the project. 3, to create the community for the project. 4, to work out the funding of the project. 5, the implementation of the project. To identify a good blockchain project, I think the first thing is to know who is the founder, because the founder himself needs to be fully committed into delivering the solution for the problems that he identified in the first place. The next thing is the team that he assembles, the people, their capabilities, and their commitment to the project. And 3, the technical roadmap for the delivery of the project. 4, a fair distribution of the incentives to the teams, the communities, and for those who participate in the blockchain, preferably decentralized. 5, the delivery of the application itself. A lot of blockchain projects talks about changing the way people live, changing about our lives. This I would have to disagree, because the best way to change is to not let the users feel the change. So it's like if you can introduce a blockchain application without having to educate the users and make them use the application without realizing it's blockchain, then you are successful. I think that's the key of it. I think in the future that all the applications, whatever it is, we need to think of this, because to educate the users of a new application, the cost is very high. Okay, the cost to do that education is very, very high, and not many projects is able to sustain that period of education. Right? So the best way is to think of a way to fit in, adapt with the usage habits of the users, and infiltrate into their lives without them realizing it. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to learn about blockchain technology, follow Blockchain Zoo's social media, and don't forget to subscribe to their YouTube channel. See you. Bye bye. 再见。谢谢。哒哒。